Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. The New Stack thanks the Cloud Native Computing Foundation for sponsoring our podcast from KubeCon plus CloudNativeCon in Austin, Texas. Learn more about cloud native technologies and the projects that are defining modern application development, deployment, and management at cncf.io. Hey, we're live here at KubeCon and with Dan Kahn of the CNCF, Executive Director, and William Dennis of Google. How are you guys?
Doing great, thank you.
Really good, thanks.
Yeah, I'm really interested in talking here about the certification program. I know, Dan, you said it's probably the most important announcement here at the event. Why do you say that?
Well, first of all, I will just say we had an amazing year, and so thankfully it is competing with a lot of other really good announcements, like the Kubernetes certified service providers that we had in LA, and the 8 new platinum members, and so it's really been spectacular across it. But in terms of the actual long-term health of the ecosystem and making the investments now to ensure that that's going to continue going forward, I think this certification program is the most important thing we've done so far.
So perhaps you guys can just explain to me, what is it? What is this certification program? Why? I think almost more importantly.
I can probably take the why. Yeah, so Kubernetes is all built around this notion of openness and portability and abstracting away the infrastructure that you're using. We see a lot of people want to use Kubernetes because they don't want vendor lock-in, right? They want to be able to move their workloads around wherever they want. So one of the goals of the conformance program is to guarantee this interoperability, to provide a way that people can certify effectively as interoperable. So the goal of the program is kind of threefold. It's to provide that predictability that if my workload runs on certified Kubernetes, it should run on any certified Kubernetes provider. The second point is, even when there are differences, and we expect there may be some, we want predictability. So this is something that we're still working on in the program, but should there exist a set of features that do make sense, that for some people to implement and some people not, we want to make sure that users can kind of navigate that and know what to expect. And thirdly, we want users to kind of get these upgrade guarantees. Because one of the things about Kubernetes is that it moves really fast. Yeah. Every 3 months, there is just an insane amount of features landing, right? And we had yesterday the community awards, all those fantastic contributors that are working really hard. We don't want their work to be wasted, right? We don't want the entire world to be stuck on like Kubernetes 1.5, while we're releasing 1.9. And so the conformance program also requires that people actually stay up to date, so that users can optionally take advantage of all those new great features the community is working on.
Interesting. So maybe you can answer the why. Why is this so important?
I think there's been a lot of certification programs before for software that increase portability, give users choice to move between vendors. We're pretty proud of this one because we think we've put it together on a very reasonable budget in a pretty innovative way, but also just gotten pretty extraordinary near universal adoption across, and it's now 42 different software distributions and platforms that have signed up for the program.
42 softwares and distributions that have signed up for the platform. Does that mean that there's 42 software distributions and platforms that are all building their own Kubernetes-inspired?
51, I think. Okay. And the last 9, I believe all of them right now are working on their certification. So amazingly, we don't have anybody who's off saying, oh no, I want to go maintain my own fork, and I'm not interested in being part of this program. We just have a few folks who said, oh, it didn't quite fit my project schedule or such, so it'll take me a few more months to get there. Right. But 51 is a crazy number when you think about the level of interest and adoption in this community.
Right, so how do you manage that? I mean, that's like gigantic, that's such a huge task.
That's why we have Dan and his team, really.
And the staff. So I have a fantastic staff that I work with on it. But one of the really cool parts about this is just that we've come later after a lot of other programs, and we were able to look at those and say things we don't want to do.
Right.
So we didn't want to have an expensive external lab that we sent people to that had a big, complicated bureaucratic process. And we didn't want to have like an expensive set of fees or anything to be involved with it. So for a small startup, it's $7,000 to be a member at the CNCF, and then there's no extra fee to get certified. Certification's free for members. And the whole process is using a set of open source tools, particularly a test harness known as Sonobui, that they run and upload. And then we actually manage it all through a GitHub repo, kind of like how Kubernetes is run, and we have a nice Google spreadsheet that tracks everyone's current status.
Nice Google spreadsheet. So tell me, what are some of the inherent complexities that you need to kind of be always watching, right? What are those common set of issues that you're always kind of looking for? So there is this kind of universal platform, really.
Right.
Because that's the sense I get. Is like, everyone can have, you can have as many Kubernetes platforms or distributions as you wish, but there has to be some universal aspect to them, right? And so, what are those kind of fundamental issues that you're really you're watching and observing and making sure that they don't get out of that things don't get out of control?
Yeah, I guess firstly, it's that universal aspect, which is why we're doing this. We're very fortunate to be working with the community, with SIG architecture. And they're kind of the stewards of Kubernetes, of what it means to be Kubernetes. And so we're kind of taking their lead on that in terms of what's in and what's out. One of the challenges of the program, I guess, is coverage. We need to, it's always a challenge to make sure, we want the program to live up to its promise that if you do have something that works in a portable way, that it will work on anyone that's certified. But to really realize that, we have to make sure the test coverage is sort of up to scratch. So that's an area of ongoing work.
That sums it up for you?
Maybe the somewhat innovative area that I think is a little unusual is that each of these companies, each of the distributions and platforms certify themselves and run these tests and produce a log and upload it. But one really appealing aspect of what we've developed is then any user can come along later. And so if they're a customer of GKE with Williams Company or OpenShift or any of the other 40 distros and platforms, they can run those exact same tests and confirm that platform is living up to their needs. And so there's an unusual aspect in which it's almost sort of the validation of the certification is almost crowdsourced.
So have you been developing your own test tools?
Well, yeah, Heptio contributed the Sonoboy framework that can run. But the tests themselves are just the standard Kubernetes end-to-end tests. But I must say it's been very great having that tool that people can just deploy into their cluster and get the result easily.
So that's what it is. So maybe a little bit more, can you provide a little bit more color around what Sonoboy does?
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically an agent that you can drop into your cluster. It'll pull down the tests from an image, execute them, and then report the results in a common format. So we found it useful with the conformance program just as a way of collecting those results. But I've even heard people using it, outside the conformance program. Like, they still want to conform with the cluster, right? Like, you may be setting up a cluster on-prem, and one of your tests is is it conformant? Like, is it going to run all the software that my vendors are giving me? So they're actually using the tool just to verify that their own settings are correct. So it's kind of broadly applicable outside of just the certification program.
Yeah, we've had that specific question of a company saying, oh, I'm using Kubernetes internally.
Right.
How do I ensure that I have a certified and our answer is, you don't really need to go through the final process of being certified, which lets you use our nice little logo and everything, because there's no one to show it to. But you can certainly run all these tests. It's open source. All the process is published in order to demonstrate that you're conformant.
So what will happen when 1.9 is released?
Yeah, so 1.9 includes new conformance tests, and the day it ships, any of our members, any of these 42 companies or others, can go through and run that, and hopefully they're running it today on the beta version, and if they see problems, I mean, it's always possible, of course, during the development, that the bug could be in the test rather than there in distribution. So hopefully they're seeing that ahead of time, but then they run those tests, and they produce a new log file, and they upload that to our GitHub repo, and it takes us a day or two to look it over, and then they're conformant for 1.9. But there is one other trick to it that's interesting that maybe you want to go through on the 1 year limitation.
Right, yeah, so I mentioned earlier that one of the goals of the certification program is to ensure that people are actually keeping up to date. Because we feel like that's a very important part of offering Kubernetes. So how we structured that in the end, we kind of had a lot of back and forward. I would say it was one of the things that took a while to get right. But where we landed is that the certification is good for a year following the release of Kubernetes. So and we allow certification on the current and previous versions. So what that means today, before 1.9 is out, is that you can still certify 1.7. But it'll expire 1 year from the date 1.7 was released. So roughly 9 months. However, what we also said is, as long as you have a version that's sort of currently in certification, that is currently certified, you can still advertise the old versions, because we acknowledge that some enterprises do actually want to, have a bit of stability and want to keep using the old versions. So yeah, it's basically a year on every release. That means that when 1.9 drops, it's not going to be like everyone instantly decertifies. They'll have like roughly 9 months to certify a current version in order to remain current with their certification.
And actually the real test for it will be in 1.10,
right,
where at least in principle you could have a company that's certified 1.7 and then lost interest in the space or just hasn't been keeping up, hasn't been investing. If they don't certify for 1.8, 1.9, or 1.10, then their certification will go out of date. But by contrast, a company that certified 1.7 and then 1.8 and then 1.9, 1.10, they can keep going and say, yeah, 1.7 is certified. If there's an enterprise who really likes old software and wants to buy it,
right,
they can still sell that. But the key thing is that they need to also offer 1.10. And our hope is that most enterprises, especially if they're doing a new deployment, would say, yes, please give me the latest version. They can't just stay back on some ancient version.
So with with these tests that they can use, can they just do auto updates essentially with this? Can they put it on a scheduler of their own and make sure that that they're using the latest version, kind of like a Chrome model?
Yeah, I think it's generally a little bit more involved, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit more, but I mean,
like,
is there an analogy? Or
Go ahead and sell to the GKE story, which is that one of the values of choosing a platform like GKE or their competitors,
right,
is that ability to the provider will upgrade it for you.
Right.
When
yeah,
you
I think as the end user, that's the ideal user experience. So I wasn't sure if you were talking about the end user experience or the provider experience here, but yeah, for an end user, hopefully it's as simple as clicking a button and initiating an upgrade.
Wow. So how many distributions and platforms did you have at this time last year?
Oh, definitely 0. Yeah, we announced the program.
But there were how many distributions and platforms were there out there?
Oh, we have a spreadsheet that we've been sort of tracking, but it's always been a little vague, and so certainly like 30 or so. There have been a lot of folks popping in and out, but it's definitely only growing now. The other really extraordinary piece I'd mention is the level of interest and engagement from China.
Yeah.
Where at launch we were able to get Alibaba Cloud and Tencent Cloud and Huawei and NetEase, and then also, interestingly, a couple small startups, ShyCat Cloud and Ghost Cloud, and I hope I'm not forgetting one other. But really just a huge level of interest in Kubernetes in China, and just complete adoption of this program, of folks saying that they wanted to be on mainstream compliant certified Kubernetes.
That's fascinating, the interest there. So are Alibaba and Tencent offering managed Kubernetes platforms?
They both are today, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Huawei as well?
They are, and I guess the other sort of big news since we chatted 6 months ago in Berlin is that Docker announced support for Kubernetes
Right.
in addition to Swarm, and they have a conformant implementation.
Right.
And then Mesosphere is also supporting Kubernetes
Right.
in addition to Mesos. They have a conformant implementation. And then the last two were Pivotal and VMware. Have also. So it was really the whole universe of companies in this space that
Worldwide,
signed on
really.
to the program.
I think that was the amazing thing for me, just to see like pretty much everyone come together on that launch day and join.
It was a little tight. Some folks went right up to the deadline, but we were thrilled to get them in under the wire.
Will you have to limit in terms of the certifications that you do? Or is it just kind of like, as any number of certifications are out there, they can come and get, as many distributions are out there, they can come and get certified?
That's the goal, right?
Yeah, we would love to have everyone. I mean, there is a cost to us to run the program, and that's why we require the CNCF membership. But again, the $7,000 for a startup is not a meaningful. Oh, and I should also mention, we have a couple community distributions, so kind of like the equivalent of Debian, but for Kubernetes, where it's completely free, and there's no charge for community distribution.
Right.
Or another one is the Cloud Foundry Foundation, which is a nonprofit.
We only have a few minutes left. What are your plans for 2018 with the certification program itself?
The program hopefully can continue running just the way it looks, but William and I are both very focused on how to invest more in the tests so that it covers more and more of the surface area of Kubernetes.
Right.
William, anything else that you'd like to add?
Absolutely, the test coverage, just making sure the program, absolutely lives up to and delivers the promise. We're also developing the profile concept just in case we need it. So, to your earlier question of what happens if there is something that's not quite uniform, we have that in place. What was interesting is that yesterday we had a meeting, and there isn't actually anyone that needs that yet. But we have a bunch of things we're working on.
The scenario for a profile is cloud versus bare metal, that if there's a set of APIs that make sense for one versus the other, we're open to doing that. So that's been discussed, but we don't want to make the program more complicated than there's a market demand for.
So I would say it's just building on the success and making sure we have everything in place to respond as we need to.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys both for taking some time to talk. I really appreciate it. It's been a great show. It really had some great interviews here and a lot of great discussions, and it's been so lively on the show floor, and just very exciting times.
Yeah, just two last pitches before you get rid of me, though. Williams has been instrumental on it, and there's been a lot of CNCF staff, but it has been a huge community effort, and I'm really both within SIG testing and SIG architecture, but then folks on our working group in multiple meetings every few weeks over the last 9 months. So it's really been...
That's a big deal.
Great to see that. And then I do want to just give my pitch for KubeCon Copenhagen,
nice.
2nd to 4th, and announced yesterday the first ever KubeCon Shanghai, November 14th and 15th.
Excellent.
And I'm hoping you'll be there with your pancake machine for both of those.
We'd love to be there.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I just want to echo, it's just amazing being part of this community and seeing everyone come together on things like this.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys very much, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
Great. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
The News Stack thanks the Cloud Native Computing Foundation for sponsoring our podcast from KubeCon CloudNativeCon in Austin, Texas. Learn more about cloud native technologies and the projects that are defining modern application development, deployment, and management at cncf.io. Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Makers at thenewstack.io/podcast. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.